I was fixing her car when she said it, and the worst part is that I still don't know if she meant it. Like what you see. She didn't look at me when she asked. That's what stuck. She was bent over the open hood, sleeves rolled to her elbows, dark hair falling forward like she hadn't bothered to tame it this morning. I had grease on my hands and a socket wrench midair, caught between tightening something important and suddenly forgetting what I was doing. The shop was quiet in that way it only gets around mid-afternoon. Radio's off. One fan clicking unevenly in the corner. The smell of oil and hot metal hanging around longer than it should. I'd been filling in for her father for a few weeks, helping out where I could. He called her his daughter. She called him dad. No one ever mentioned ages, but you could tell. She'd lived a whole life before I showed up with my clean boots and too many questions. Her name was Claire. She had a way of standing that made you think she didn't need permission to be anywhere. Confident without being loud. She wore jeans that had seen better years and boots that were scuffed past the point of caring. When she spoke, people listened. When she didn't, they still did. I'm just checking the belt, I said, which wasn't an answer to anything. She straightened slowly, wiping her hands on a rag. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away, like she was measuring something and didn't want me to see the result. The corner of her mouth lifted, not quite a smile. Relax, she said. I'm kidding. Maybe she was. But the air had shifted. I could feel it settle in my chest, heavy and unfamiliar. I nodded too fast and went back to work, suddenly aware of how close she was standing. I could smell her shampoo, something clean and understated that didn't belong in a place like this. I'd noticed her before that moment. The way she brought coffee for the guys, but always forgot to take one for herself. How she listened more than she talked. How she said my name like she was tasting it, then pretending she hadn't. She leaned against the workbench while I finished up, watching without hovering. Every now and then she'd point something out, not correcting me, just adding. When I thanked her, she shrugged. Just trying to help, she said. There was a pause after that. Too long. The kind that makes you aware of your breathing. I wiped my hands again, even though they were already clean. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then let it fall back where it had been, like she changed her mind halfway through. You any good with old engines? She asked. I'm learning, I said. From you, apparently. That got a real smile. Brief, but real. It softened her face in a way that surprised me. For a second, she looked tired. Not worn out, just aware. Like she'd seen things I hadn't yet, and wasn't sure if she wanted to warn me or let me find out on my own. Her dad called from the office then, breaking the moment. She stepped away, business back in her posture. Before she turned the corner, she glanced over her shoulder. Thanks for today, she said. Really? I watched her go, the sound of her boots fading into the back rooms, and realized I hadn't finished tightening the bolt I'd started before she spoke. I stood there longer than I needed to, replaying her words, her tone, the way she didn't look at me when she said them. I still don't know what she meant. I just know I've thought about it every day since. The second time felt different because it lasted longer than it should have. It was raining hard enough that the gutters overflowed, the kind of steady, impatient rain that makes everything smell like wet concrete and oil. Her dad had already gone home. I was about to lock up when Claire came back into the shop, shaking water from her jacket like she'd forgotten the rest of the world existed outside that door. You still here? She asked. I nodded. Figured I'd finished the inventory. She hesitated in the doorway, keys in her hand, then let them drop onto the counter. The sound echoed too loudly. My car's making that noise again, she said. The one you said not to ignore. I followed her out without thinking. The shop lights buzzed back on, casting everything in that pale, unforgiving glow. She stood beside me while I worked, closer than necessary, but not touching. She folded her arms, then unfolded them. Her hands kept finding each other, fingers pressing into knuckles like she needed something solid. She was quieter than before, guarded. When I asked questions, she answered but didn't add more. I filled the space with explanations she probably already knew. I talked too much when I was nervous. I could tell she noticed. You don't have to explain, she said gently. I trust you. That word landed wrong. Too intimate for a Tuesday evening. I glanced at her, and for a moment her mask slipped. Just a fraction. Her eyes looked tired. Not sleepy. Tired in the way people get when they carry things alone for too long. She laughed suddenly, sharp and quick, like she was surprised by it herself. God, listen to me. Trust you. I barely know you. But you do, I said before I could stop myself. Then I added, softer, a little. She didn't answer right away. She stared at the rain streaking down the garage door. Her reflection warped in the metal. I've been doing this place since I was 17, she said. Sometimes I forget I don't have to anymore. There it was. Not a confession exactly, more like a crack. I noticed the way her shoulders slumped once she said it, like she'd set something down. Her hands were trembling, barely. I pretended not to see. You're allowed to stop, I said. Sometimes. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Are we? The car started with a clean, obedient sound. I shut the hood and wiped my hands. We stood there, facing each other, the rain drumming overhead. She was close enough that if I moved wrong, I'd feel it everywhere. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and turned it face down without checking. I should go, she said. She didn't move. Neither did I. Thanks, she added, quieter now. Her fingers brushed my wrist as she reached for her keys. Not accidental. Not lingering. Just enough to make my breath catch. She pulled back immediately, like she'd crossed an invisible line. Good night, she said. I watched her taillights disappear into the rain, my wrist still warm where she'd touched me, wondering why something so small felt like a door cracking open, and why part of me hoped it would never fully close. It happened late, after the shop lights were off and the rest of the block had gone quiet. She'd asked if I could help her sort through a box of old invoices she'd found in the back office. Just paperwork, she said. I told myself the same thing as I followed her inside, rain tapping lightly against the windows like it was eavesdropping. The office smelled like dust and cold coffee. One lamp on the desk, everything else in shadow. She sat on the edge of the chair instead of in it, knees angled toward me, a stack of papers balanced on her thigh. I took the floor, back against the filing cabinet, close enough that our knees almost touched. Almost. We worked in silence for a while. The good kind. Pages sliding. Pen scratches. Her foot tapping softly, then stopping when she noticed she was doing it. You don't have to stay, she said without looking up. I know. She nodded, like that was answer enough. At some point she laughed under her breath. Not amused. Just surprised. I used to think I'd have my own place by now. Somewhere without leaking ceilings. I smiled, then caught myself. Still time. She glanced at me, held my gaze longer than usual. You really believe that, don't you? I believe people don't end up where they think they will, I said. Doesn't mean it's worse. She exhaled slowly. Her hand rested on the paper too long, fingers splayed, knuckles pale. I noticed a faint scar near her thumb. Old. I wondered how it happened and didn't ask. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She stiffened immediately, picked it up, then stopped. The screen lit her face in a way the lamp hadn't. I saw the name before she turned it away. An X, I assumed. Or something like one. She stood and walked toward the window, answering it with her back to me. Her voice dropped, clipped. Now's not a good time. A pause. No. I said no. Another pause, longer. Her shoulders tensed. Please don't do this. She ended the call and didn't move for a second. When she turned around, her composure was back in place, but it was thinner now, worn at the edges. I'm sorry, she said. I should have. You don't have to explain, I said too quickly. She smiled at that. Small. Grateful. She sat back down, closer this time. Our knees touched. Neither of us shifted. I forget, she said quietly, what it's like to just sit with someone, without defending anything. I swallowed. My heart was doing something unhelpful. I don't need anything from you. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then back up. A mistake. Or not. I know, she said. That's what makes it hard. The rain picked up again, sudden and loud. She reached out, almost without looking, and rested her hand on my knee. Not squeezing. Just there. I didn't move. I couldn't trust myself to. Her thumb brushed once, absent, like she'd forgotten where she was. Then footsteps outside. A door slamming down the block. Reality rushing back in. She pulled her hand away as if she'd been burned. Stood up. I should lock up. I nodded, forcing myself to breathe evenly as she crossed the room. At the door, she hesitated. Looked back at me. Her hand lingered on the knob. I'm glad you stayed, she said. I opened my mouth to say something honest. Something that might change things. She turned the handle before I could. The next few days were wrong in small ways that added up. She avoided the office when I was there. Left notes instead of asking questions. Thanked me without meeting my eyes. I told myself it was nothing. That this was how things were supposed to be. Normal. Professional. Safe. By Friday, the silence felt louder than anything she could have said. I was closing up when she finally spoke. You busy? She stood in the doorway, coat still on, bag hanging from her shoulder like she might leave at any second. Her voice was steady, but her hand tightened around the strap, knuckles whitening. No, I said. I was just locking up. She nodded, then didn't move. The shop lights were half off, leaving us in a pocket of dimness near the counter. The air felt heavier than usual, like it might rain again even though the sky was clear. We can't keep doing this, she said. My chest tightened. Doing what? She let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it all week. Pretending this is just work. That nothing's changed. I leaned back against the counter, grounding myself. I haven't done anything. I know, she said quickly. Too quickly. That's not what I mean. She stepped closer, then stopped. Like there was an invisible line she didn't trust herself to cross. When she looked at me, there was no teasing this time. No half-smile. Just honesty, bare and uncomfortable. I think about you more than I should, she said. And I don't know what that means. The room went very still. Even the fan in the corner had stopped. I chose my words carefully. I don't expect anything from you. She flinched. Not because she disagreed, but because it was true. That's the problem, she said quietly. You don't push. You don't ask. You just show up. And I've built my whole life around not letting things like that matter. She looked past me, at the oil-stained floor, the tool racks, the familiar mess she controlled so well. I've made a lot of choices. Some of them were about survival. Some were about fear. I don't know which category this falls into. I swallowed. Then maybe we slowed down. She laughed softly, humorless. I'm not good at slow. I'm good at stopping. That scared me more than anything she could have said. We stood there, close enough that I could see the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the ones that only showed when she was tired. I wanted to reach for her. I didn't. What do you want me to do? I asked. She met my gaze, held it. Her eyes shone, but she didn't let the tears fall. I want you to understand that if I pull away, it's not because you imagined this. I nodded. My throat burned. Okay. She took a step back, putting space between us like it was a decision she'd rehearsed. At the door, she paused, hand on the frame. I don't trust myself, she said, barely above a whisper. And that's the part one can't forgive. Then she left me there, alone with the echo of her words, knowing something fragile had finally been spoken out loud, and that silence would never feel the same again. The shift came on a Monday that felt like any other. No rain. No tension thick enough to warn me. Just the usual hum of the shop and the bell over the door sticking for half a second before it rang. She didn't come in until late afternoon. I knew because I'd been half listening for her steps all day, even though I told myself I wasn't. Hey, she said. Just that. Not my name. Not an apology. She looked tired in a quieter way than before, like she'd spent the weekend somewhere she hadn't wanted to be. She held up her phone. Can I play you something? I nodded, unsure what else to do. We stood near the counter. She didn't sit, didn't lean, just pressed play and held the phone between us like it was fragile. A man's voice filled the space. Calm, older than me, warm in a way that made my chest tighten without permission. Claire, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't pick up again. Which means you're probably mad. Or pretending not to be. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. I always do. Even when I don't say it right. She stopped it before it finished. That's my husband, she said. Past tense. No hesitation. I didn't respond. I was afraid anything I said would knock something loose. He died 4 years ago, she went on. Cancer. Long enough to say goodbye. Long enough to learn how to function while everything else fell apart. She finally looked at me then, searching my face for something. Understanding, maybe. Or permission. He used to leave me voicemails like that, she said. Even when we lived in the same house. Especially then. I nodded slowly. The shop felt different now. Smaller. Like it was listening. I found that one yesterday, she said. I thought I'd deleted them all. Guess I missed one. I'm glad you didn't, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She exhaled, something between a laugh and a breath she'd been holding for years. You remind me of him. Not in the obvious ways. Just the way you pay attention. The way you don't rush people. The words landed carefully, but they still shook me. I don't want to be a replacement, I said. Not defensive, just honest. I know, she said quickly. God, I know. That's not what this is. She paused, then softer. But it scared me how familiar it felt to care again. That was the confession. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just devastating in its simplicity. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and stepped closer. Not touching. Just enough that I could feel her presence, solid and real. I don't expect you to fix anything, she said. I just needed you to know why I pulled away. I nodded. Thank you for telling me. We stood there for a long moment. No music. No rain. Just the quiet breathing of two people trying not to break something fragile by naming it too soon. As she turned to leave, she hesitated, then reached out and squeezed my forearm. Brief. Grounding. For what it's worth, she said, you're not a ghost. Then she let go and walked out, leaving me with the strange, steady understanding that whatever this was, it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't borrowed from the past either. It didn't collapse all at once. It settled. A week passed. Then another. We found a rhythm that wasn't avoidance and wasn't pursuit either. Just honest. She stopped pretending I wasn't there. I stopped pretending I didn't notice everything. The truth didn't announce itself. It showed up in smaller ways. She waited until I finished what I was doing before speaking, asked my opinion, and actually listened to the answer. Sometimes she'd sit on the edge of the workbench while I cleaned up, not talking, just there. The silence between us stopped feeling like a test. One night, she stayed late again. Not because something was broken, because she didn't want to go home yet. She made tea in the back room. Real mugs, chipped at the rim. We sat on overturned crates, knees angled toward each other. The shop lights were off except for one by the door, throwing long shadows across the floor. I don't think I'm confused anymore, she said. She didn't look at me when she said it. Watched the steam rise instead. I didn't rush to answer. Let the words settle. What are you instead? Tired of running mental drills, she said. Tired of pretending this is harmless just because we haven't touched. That made my throat tighten. I don't want to hurt you, she added. And I don't want to use you to prove I'm still alive. I nodded. I wouldn't let you. That finally got her attention. She looked up, searching my face. You're very sure of that. I'm sure of us being careful, I said. Whatever this is. She smiled then. Not playful. Relieved. She reached out without ceremony and rested her hand over mine. No spark. No rush. Just warmth. Her thumb pressed once, like punctuation. We stayed that way for a long time. At some point, she leaned her forehead against my shoulder. I froze for half a second, then relaxed into it. Her hair brushed my jaw. She smelled like soap and something faintly citrus. This feels dangerous, she murmured. Everything honest does, I said. She laughed softly, breath against my collarbone. Then she straightened, but didn't pull away completely. Our knees still touched. Our hands stayed linked. We'll take it slow, she said. Not a question. A decision. I nodded. Yeah. No promises. No labels. Just a shared understanding that pretending was over. When we finally stood, she didn't rush to create space. She squeezed my hand once more before letting go, like she was memorizing the shape of it. At the door, she paused and looked back at me. Come by tomorrow, she said. Not because you're needed. I will, I said. She left, and this time the quiet didn't ache. It felt settled, like something had finally stopped resisting what it already knew. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't replaying a moment in my head. I was ready for the next one. I'm telling this from a place that feels steadier now. Not perfect. Not finished. Just real in a way I didn't know how to name back then. We didn't rush anything after that night. If anything, we slowed down more. Coffee before work. Walks around the block when the shop got too loud. Long conversations that didn't need to resolve into anything other than being heard. We learned each other's silences. Which ones meant comfort? Which ones meant fear? What changed first was me. I stopped confusing intensity for meaning. I learned that wanting someone doesn't give you the right to pull them toward you. It gives you the responsibility to stand still and let them choose. I didn't need to be everything to her. I just needed to be present, honest, and willing to leave space where her past still lived. What changed in her was quieter. She stopped apologizing for the days she felt heavy. Stopped explaining herself before anyone asked. Sometimes she would talk about her husband. Sometimes she wouldn't. I learned that love doesn't disappear just because a new one grows beside it. They don't cancel each other out. They coexist, awkwardly at first, then more gently over time. We never made a big announcement about what we were. We didn't need to. People noticed anyway. The way she'd reach for my sleeve when she laughed. The way I'd wait for her without checking my phone. The way the shop felt warmer when we were both there, like something invisible had settled into place. Love, I learned, doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it shows up as relief. Relief that you don't have to perform, that you don't have to rush, that you're allowed to want someone without turning them into an answer for everything you've lost. Love can be two people sitting side by side, not filling the silence, trusting it. We still argue. We still hesitate. There are days she pulls inward and days I overthink everything. But now, when that happens, we talk. Not to fix, just to understand. That's the part no one really tells you. The real connection isn't the spark. It's what you build once the spark stops trying to impress you. Sometimes I think back to that first day. Her bent over the hood. That offhand question. I smile at how small it was. How it didn't promise anything. How it didn't have to. It was just an opening. And we stepped through it carefully. Together. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?